By the time the store doors were locked that night, Victoria Ashford's husband had lost a contract worth $8 million. The store manager had been escorted upstairs by corporate security, and every customer on the marble floor had gone silent around a single security screen. But that morning, none of them knew any of that would happen. All they saw was Claire Bennett, a 32-year-old single mom, in a faded blue coat, standing near the women's formal wear section with her 7-year-old daughter holding her hand. Victoria Ashford, the millionaire wife everyone in the city treated like royalty, stood in front of her with 2 friends, a private shopper, and a store manager waiting for orders. She looked Claire up and down, smiled like she was doing her a favor, and said women like her should not bring children into stores where one scarf cost more than their rent. Claire's face went pale. Her daughter Lily lowered her eyes. Then Victoria accused Claire of stealing, forced her to open her bag in front of everyone, and laughed when a child's drawing fell onto the floor. But what Victoria did not know was that upstairs, behind the mirrored glass of the private client office, an elderly woman in a gray coat was watching every camera feed with a sealed cream folder on her lap. Inside that folder was Victoria's future, and by closing time, Victoria would be begging that same single mom not to say one more word. Before I tell you what actually happened, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me your country in the comments. Now, let's begin. Claire Bennett had not walked into Bellamy & Rowe because she wanted luxury. She walked in because she had one job interview the next morning, one chance to leave night shifts behind, and one old gift card her mother had saved for years before she died. Bellamy & Rowe was the most expensive department store in the city, the kind of place with glass doors, polished every hour, and perfume in the air before anyone even reached the counter. Claire had passed it many times from the bus window while taking Lily to school. She never imagined going inside. Stores like that did not feel built for women who counted grocery money in the parking lot. But the gift card had been hidden in her mother's Bible with a small note that said, "For the day you need to feel seen." Claire had cried when she found it. For 3 weeks, she kept it in an envelope inside her purse, waiting for a reason brave enough to use it. Then the call came from Bellamy Foundation, a non-profit connected to the store's owner. Claire had been shortlisted for a paid training program for single mothers returning to professional work. The interview required business attire. Claire owned one black skirt, one blouse with a missing button, and shoes that pinched her feet. So on a cold Saturday morning, with Lily beside her, and the gift card tucked safely in her purse, Claire stepped through the gold-framed doors. She told herself she only needed one blazer. She did not know someone had already read her application. She did not know someone upstairs had been waiting to see who she was when no one important seemed to be watching. Lily noticed the chandeliers first. She squeezed Claire's hand and whispered that the ceiling looked like a palace. Claire smiled, but her fingers stayed tight around her purse strap. Everything inside the store looked too delicate to touch. White marble floors, glass display cases, cream-colored sofas, dresses arranged by color like paintings. Sales associates moved quietly from one wealthy customer to another, carrying silk scarves and boxed shoes as if they were handling secrets. Claire tried not to look nervous. She had worked since she was 16. She had cleaned hotel rooms, answered phones, stacked shelves, and served coffee to people who never learned her name. Still, walking into that store made her feel like she had entered a test she had not studied for. Lily pointed to a navy blazer on a mannequin and said it looked like something a boss would wear. Claire laughed softly because that was exactly what she needed. She checked the price tag and felt her stomach tighten. Even with the gift card, it would take almost everything she had, but she imagined herself at the interview the next morning. sitting straight, looking prepared, speaking clearly about the life she wanted to build for her daughter. That image gave her courage. She reached for the blazer carefully. Before her fingers touched the sleeve, a sales associate appeared and asked if she needed help in a voice that said she hoped Claire did not. Claire said she wanted to try the blazer in a medium and a large. The associate looked at Lily, then at Claire's coat, then at the gift card envelope in her hand. Her smile did not move. She said those pieces were from the executive collection, and the clearance section was downstairs. Claire's chest tightened, but she stayed calm. She said she knew what she wanted. That was when the private elevator opened, and Victoria Ashford walked in. Victoria Ashford did not walk into stores like a customer. She entered like the store had been waiting for her. Two friends followed her, both wearing long coats and soft leather gloves. A private shopper hurried toward them with champagne-colored garment bags already prepared. The store manager, Mr. Ellison, came from behind the jewelry counter so quickly his shoes clicked against the marble. Victoria was married to Grant Ashford, a real estate millionaire, whose name appeared on charity boards, hospital wings, and glossy magazine pages. Her own reputation was built on lunch events, benefit auctions, and speeches about helping struggling women regain dignity. She had become famous for saying dignity begins with presentation. Claire had heard that quote once in a video about the Bellamy Foundation program. She had even written it down during her application. Now, Victoria stood 10 feet away, laughing as Mr. Ellison welcomed her like a queen. At first, Claire tried to move aside. She took Lily's hand and stepped back toward the blazer rack. But Victoria saw her. Her eyes paused on Claire's coat, then Lily's worn sneakers, then the navy blazer in Claire's arms. A small smile crossed her face, not friendly, interested, like she had found something to play with. She asked Mr. Ellison whether the store had started allowing walk-ins from the bus station. One of her friends laughed. Claire looked down at Lily, hoping her daughter had not understood. Lily understood enough. Her fingers tightened around Claire's hand. Victoria moved closer and said some people came into luxury spaces just to take pictures and touch things they could never buy. Claire's face warmed. She said quietly that she was there to purchase a blazer. Victoria looked at the envelope in Claire's hand and said gift cards were sweet, but they did not turn desperation into class. The words landed softly. The damage did not. Claire wanted to leave right then, but Lily looked up at her with scared eyes. And something in Claire refused to teach her daughter that cruelty always got the room. So she held the blazer against her chest and asked the associate again for a fitting room. The associate looked at Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison looked at Victoria. Then he gave a small nod, as if Claire had been granted a favor instead of basic service. The fitting room hallway smelled like expensive perfume. Claire tried on the blazer while Lily sat on the little velvet bench outside the curtain, swinging her feet without touching anything. The blazer fit better than Claire expected. It made her shoulders look steady. It made her feel like the woman she had been before bills, exhaustion, and loneliness taught her to lower her expectations. She stepped out to check the mirror. For 1 second, Lily smiled. She said, "Mommy, you look like the lady who gets the job." Claire almost cried. Then Victoria's voice came from behind them. She said the blazer was doing its best. Her friends laughed again. Claire looked at herself in the mirror and saw the color drain from her own face. Victoria stepped closer, touching a silk scarf on the table beside the mirror. She said there was confidence, and then there was pretending. Claire said nothing. Her hands shook slightly as she returned to the fitting room. While she changed back into her coat, Lily bent down to pick up a gold bracelet that had slipped near the bench. She held it out and said, "Someone dropped this." Before Claire could answer, Victoria turned around and gasped. She said that bracelet was hers. Then her eyes moved to Lily's small hand. The whole hallway went cold. Victoria snatched the bracelet from Lily like the child had burned it. Lily stepped back, frightened. Claire moved between them and said her daughter had only picked it up from the floor. Victoria's face changed in a way that made the nearby associate stop breathing. She said that was what people always said when they were caught. Claire felt her blood run cold. Mr. Ellison appeared within seconds, summoned by a look from Victoria more than by any call. Customers began turning toward the fitting rooms. Victoria held up the bracelet and said she wanted Claire's bag checked before anything else disappeared. Claire said no. Her voice was quiet but clear. Mr. Ellison lowered his voice and said it would be easier for everyone if she cooperated. Easier for everyone. Claire looked at the faces around her. No one looked at Lily. No one looked ashamed. They only watched, waiting for the poor woman to prove she was not what Victoria had already decided she was. Lily began to cry without sound. That broke something in Claire. She opened her purse with shaking hands and placed everything on the small glass table. Her wallet, the gift card, a packet of crackers, her bus pass, a folded job interview notice, a crayon drawing Lily had made of the two of them standing under a yellow sun. The drawing slipped from the table and fell to the floor. Victoria looked down at it and laughed softly. She said children learned begging early when their mothers taught them. Claire's throat closed. Lily bent to pick up the drawing, but one of Victoria's heels pressed the corner of the paper before she could reach it. Upstairs, behind the mirrored glass, the elderly woman in the gray coat leaned forward. She did not blink. Then she lifted a phone and said 3 words, "Save the audio." The elderly woman was Margaret Bellamy, though almost no one on the sales floor would have recognized her. Her family name was on the building, on the shopping bags, on the foundation website, and on the brass plaque beside the entrance. But Margaret had stopped attending ribbon cuttings years ago. She preferred to visit her stores quietly, dressed plainly, watching how people behaved when they did not know ownership was in the room. That morning she had come for 2 reasons. The first was to review customer service complaints that had reached corporate. The second was to meet, unofficially, the final candidates for the Bellamy Second Start program before the interview panel. Claire Bennett was one of them. Margaret had read Claire's application the night before. She had read about the night shifts, the daughter, the unfinished business degree, the mother who died before seeing Claire start over. She had placed Claire's file in the cream folder on her lap. Beside it was another document, a sponsorship agreement with Grant Ashford's company, brought in through Victoria's influence. If signed, the Ashfords would host the foundation's largest charity gala of the year and receive more publicity than money could buy. Margaret had not signed it yet. She wanted to see whether Victoria's public kindness matched her private character. Now she had her answer. On the screen, Claire stood beside the glass table, with her purse emptied, her daughter crying, and Victoria smiling like humiliation was entertainment. Margaret watched Mr. Ellison ask Claire if she had receipts for everything in her own bag. She watched Victoria whisper something to her friend, then glanced toward the cameras as if cameras belonged to people like her. Margaret pressed the call button again and told security not to move until she came downstairs herself. Then she opened the cream folder and removed the unsigned contract. On the sales floor, Claire had reached the edge of what she could carry. She placed the gift card back in her purse, folded Lily's damaged drawing, and told Mr. Ellison she wanted to pay for the blazer and leave. Victoria laughed and said women like Claire always wanted to leave once questions started. Mr. Ellison did not stop her. He only asked Claire to wait while security reviewed the fitting room area. Claire looked at him, then at the small crowd. She realized none of them were waiting for truth. They were waiting for permission to keep believing the worst. Lily wiped her face with her sleeve and whispered that she was sorry. Claire knelt in front of her daughter, right there on the marble floor. She said Lily had done nothing wrong. Her voice shook, but she made sure Lily heard every word. Then the private elevator opened again. The store changed before anyone spoke. Associates straightened. Mr. Ellison turned so fast his face went pale. Margaret Bellamy stepped out slowly, holding the cream folder in one hand and the unsigned contract in the other. She did not look rich the way Victoria looked rich. She looked calm. That was worse. Victoria frowned, clearly trying to place her. Mr. Ellison whispered Mrs. Bellamy. The name moved through the crowd like a dropped glass. Victoria's smile disappeared. Margaret walked past her and stopped beside Claire. She looked at Lily first and gently asked if she was all right. Lily nodded, still crying. Then Margaret turned to Claire and said she was sorry the store had failed her. The floor went completely silent. Victoria opened her mouth, but Margaret raised one hand. She said she had watched everything. Then she looked directly at Mr. Ellison and added that the cameras had audio. Victoria's face went pale, but she tried to recover. She said there had been a misunderstanding and that she was only protecting the store. Margaret did not answer her right away. She turned to the security supervisor, who had come down behind her with a tablet. The footage played without sound at first. It showed Victoria entering the fitting room hallway. It showed her bracelet already loose on her wrist while she adjusted a scarf. It showed the bracelet slipping onto the floor before Lily ever touched it. Then the audio played. Victoria's words came through clearly. Bus station. Desperation. Women like her. Children learned begging early. Every sentence returned to the room, colder than when she had first said it. One of Victoria's friends looked away. The other stepped back. Mr. Ellison stared at the floor. But Margaret was not finished. She opened the cream folder and removed Claire's application. She said Claire Bennett was not a thief, not a problem, not a woman to be managed out of the store. She was one of 3 finalists for the Bellamy Second Start program. She was scheduled to interview the next morning. Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. Margaret then lifted the unsigned sponsorship agreement. She said Victoria's husband's company had requested partnership branding for the foundation gala. She had been considering it. Then she tore the contract once down the middle. The sound was small, but it landed like thunder. Victoria's hands began to shake. She said Margaret could not punish her husband for one uncomfortable moment. Margaret looked at the ruined drawing in Claire's hand and said it was not one moment. It was character. The room went completely still. Mr. Ellison tried to apologize next, but Margaret stopped him too. She said apologies that arrived after power entered the room were not proof of regret. They were proof of fear. His face went red. She instructed security to collect his access card and told the assistant manager to ring up Claire's blazer at no charge. Claire shook her head immediately. She said she could pay. Margaret looked at her with something close to recognition and said she knew Claire could. That was not the point. The point was that Bellamy and Rowe owed her a service it had refused to give. Claire looked down at the blazer, then at Lily, then at the crowd that had watched her humiliation like it was a show. Her hands were still shaking. She said she did not want charity. Margaret nodded. Then she said it was not charity to return dignity after someone tried to take it. Victoria stepped closer, her voice lower now. She asked Claire to be reasonable. That was the first time she spoke to Claire like Claire had power. Claire noticed it. Everyone did. Victoria said she supported women like her through charities every year. Claire looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, women like her were never the problem. Women like Victoria only liked helping single mothers when they were quiet, grateful, and far away from the same rooms. Victoria's face changed. Her friends would not look at her. Margaret placed the blazer in Claire's hands herself, then gave her a second envelope. This one was not sealed. Inside was a letter confirming that Claire's interview had been moved forward to that afternoon, with Margaret Bellamy joining the panel personally. Claire's knees almost weakened. Lily looked up and asked if that meant her mom still got the chance. Margaret smiled gently and said no. It meant her mom had already earned the room. Claire wore the navy blazer to the interview 2 hours later. Her eyes were still swollen, and Lily's drawing, now creased at the corner, sat folded in her purse. She almost left twice before the elevator reached the foundation floor. But Lily held her hand and said she looked like the lady who gets the job. That gave Claire enough strength to walk in. The interview was not a fairy tale. Claire still had bills. She still had fear. She still had years of being underestimated sitting in her chest. But when Margaret asked why she wanted the program, Claire did not pretend. She said she wanted work that let her daughter see her standing upright. She said she wanted to finish what life had interrupted. She said she was tired of being treated like survival was the same as failure. Margaret listened without interrupting. 3 weeks later, Claire received the call. She had been accepted into the program with paid training, childcare support, and a placement track in operations management. Victoria tried to repair her reputation with a public apology about a misunderstanding, but the people who had been in the store knew better. The Ashford sponsorship never returned. Mr. Ellison was transferred out pending review. And Claire kept the blazer, not because it was expensive, because it reminded her of the day her daughter watched her be humiliated, and then watched her stand back up. Years later, Lily would still remember the marble floor, the torn drawing, and the old woman in the gray coat who changed everything. But Claire remembered something quieter. She remembered the moment Victoria looked at her and realized the woman she had tried to shame had become the only person in the room with nothing to hide. Some people think money makes them untouchable. It does not. It only makes the fall louder when the truth is watching.